Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we'll bring you day 337 of Putin's invasion into Ukraine, with, as always, Olexiy Arestovych, former advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine, and Mark Feygin, Russian opposition politician. Before we jump in, I want to express appreciation to those of you who chimed in, said where you guys are from. We do have quite a collection. We got Lori from Colorado, Topia from Kentucky, Carolyn from Virginia, and Wendy from Pennsylvania. A few people from Florida, Alan from Seattle, James from North Carolina, Peanut from Hong Kong, a couple people from Australia, Susan from Canada, Marmule from Denmark, and Flannel from Poland. Thank you guys. Really appreciate your support and your continuous patronage and just sticking with us and continuing to be a subscriber. Well, without further delays, let's dive into day 337. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feigin Live. We're doing another stream. Time is, as always, 10:03 in Kiev PM and 11:03 PM in Moscow. We'll be discussing day 337 with Olexiy Arestovich. Good evening, Olexiy. Hello, everybody. All right, we have 116,000 with us. Over 30,000 of you click the like button. As always, I remind those who haven't done that yet, please click that subscribe button to Feigin Live, to Olexiy Arestovich, and of course to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English. It is almost Friday, but we do expect you to help us a little, and that's important to get the video promoted higher in YouTube's. Anyway, let's start with the main news. I think now, 2 days after that, it's good to discuss that with all the reactions, and this news has been verified all over about the supplies of American tanks, about Leopards and British Challengers. Moscow reaction. How do you gauge that? Now that they officially post statements that they consider United States, Britain, and European countries to be actively involved in this war, and prognosticating about the future flow of events and so on. In your opinion, do you think this is an excuse for Moscow for continuous escalation against the West? Because there's nowhere to escalate against Ukraine here, right? Okay, let's start with a simple fact that threats and evaluations, they have a price, they have a cost if they are meaningful, if they mean something. The West did make their estimates of this war and they supplied weapons. Russia is accusing the West now. What will they do? Realistically, Mark, what can they do? Well, they probably, I don't know, keep threatening. Yeah, it's like in an old saying, 101st Chinese warning. Even China doesn't behave like that anymore. It's somewhat like a discussion between Prigozhin and Strelkov. It's about nothing. So this is not serious. All the screams we hear from Russia. I would say another news today is a missile attack on Ukraine, according to a statement by Zaluzhny, our general commander of the defense. They've sent 55 missiles, 20 in the area of the capital, 4 controlled missiles X-59. They destined to fight with air defense systems, but they could have been shot at electric stations as well, and 3 of them were shot down. According to 3 p.m. of our emergency services, 11 people dead, 11 wounded as a result of this missile barrage. It might have changed later, but I am not seeing new numbers. And last night there were Shaheds, UAVs. That was last night, and today is a missile day. According to the statements of Ministry of Energy, we have problems with Vinnytska and Kievska regions, and they'll return to planned outages to counter that situation while they're repairing the electric systems. And you can gauge that, yeah, they achieved some, as always, they destroyed some of our electric transformers. All right. So, Alexei, can you comment on the number of missiles shot down with all the peculiarity of that discussion for our dialogue? Do you think, or can one say that the precision and effectiveness of air defense systems that you guys have? Let's not do the estimates here. Let's do calculations. So it's 85% that were shot down today. This is a high number. Usually it's floating between 75 to 85. Today we managed to hit down 85%. Is it growing? It's hard to tell because right now we don't have a steady graph that says, okay, for the last period we've been shooting everything down at 85%. There are different days and different activities. I understand. But these Western systems that were supplied, NASAMS and others, are they effective? Oh, these guys are very effective, yeah. President said that these top-level systems have 100% efficacy, but Minister of Defense did mention that 12 shots, 12 hits, 20 shots, 20 hits. So these top-level systems are very effective. But there's a non-linear dependency because some of these systems are shooting down at 100%, but they have to be in the right place at the right time. We also have to guess the possible avenue of attack of our foe, and they are also playing that game of cat mouse with us, trying to change different parameters, so in attempts to sneak their missiles past our defenses. So it's a little difficult subject for discussion. Still, we are pretty effective. I would say 85% is amazing effectivity. At the same time, 11 dead, 11 wounded is a solemn story. This is a tragedy every time they do a missile barrage. And most of dead and wounded are civilians. So let's conclude with the tanks now. Okay, please proceed, Alexei. So the main tank in NATO countries is Leopard. Challenger is supplied by Britain, but the main tank in their group will be Leopard. So that tank can distinguish between tank and armored personnel carrier at 5 kilometers and can hit them with almost 100% guarantee at about half that distance, 2,700 meters or so. So if Leopard meets Russian tank at night, we understand which one will win, right? And now imagine a battalion or a brigade going into offensive at night, supported by infantry, but it's tanks and Abrams, Leopards and Challengers. This will be a second game-changing weapon on the field if they start operating, especially at night. According to different statements, we can have a total of 80 to 120. That's the total tank brigade, roughly in numbers. Different countries, including Spain and Northern European countries, announced their support. It's not a trivial task to supply them as a detachment, but I expect Ukraine to be able to create such a battle unit probably closer to April, and this will be a factor that will be a game changer on any part of the front where they're applied. So this will be a game-changing weapon in our favor, radically, drastically. All right, we did start with that. Moscow has a hysteria in different tones, and they're saying different things, but overall, the vast majority of their statements are directed at escalation in general. Mark, let's look at the real opportunities for them to escalate. What have they? What are their capabilities to do that? What these kind people can use to escalate? They will do what? Hit NATO territories? That'll be a clear consequence. Hit the bridges? Okay, a threat, but remember our military was trying to destroy one of the bridges? And we've been using HIMARS, not Russian blunt force area targeting artillery. We had high precision HIMARS, and it took us, what, a month to destroy somewhat? So, what else? They can hit Bankovo Street, the center of decision making. Okay, yeah, they did. They destroyed 2 stories of our central command and leadership building. What else? We'll retaliate. So, and we do have different interesting capabilities now. So what else? Nothing. Just nothing. I wanted to discuss another thing. Did you hear 2 speeches by Putin last week and this week? Sorry, what you're saying, you're breaking up. There were 2 speeches by Putin last week and this week. There was a small but very significant difference between them. I was actually eating during the second statement and I actually paused. So, first time, last week, he said that our task is to protect of our territories of Donetsk and Lugansk republics. We are defending these Russian lands of Russian people, and Donetsk and Lugansk are our territories to defend. And this week, he said our interests were threatened from the neighboring territories. What is the difference, Mark? Mark is, it's a principal difference. Territory of Donetsk and Lugansk is a measurable goal and objective. And that's what you can report upon. But when you speak about interests, it's a very vague statement. Because you can stop and say, I succeeded at any moment. You can withdraw and say, we defended our interests. That's it. I'm done defending that. And why is he making that difference in his speeches? This is my hypothesis, personal opinion. I think return of Gerasimov and military into the commanding structure of this operation, it might mean that he started listening to the military. And his military, if they're honest, would have told him that his tasks of liberating these so-called Donetsk and Lugansk republics is unreal, even with all the forces they managed to accumulate. So at most what they can do is maybe capture Konstantinovka, streamline that north-south line of the front, and perhaps keep and try to hold the water reservoir that supplies water to Donetsk city, which was having issues with water supply since the beginning of that invasion. And that's probably it, as much as the military can promise to hold and do. And rhetoric started changing, because interest is not a measurable, is not an analytical figure. You cannot express that in meters, in numbers, in borders. It's just interests. Interests can come en masse and can disappear in 1 second. And one can state that his interests are satisfied and they defended their interests, and there's no way for you to gauge it. And that's a principal difference. This is acute modestation of Russian asks, understanding that their wants need to be shortened drastically, and they need to prepare themselves for a better negotiating position. And all their efforts on a large scale is attempt to create a better negotiating start. And there's, in some degrees, acceptance of the difficulty of their current situation. All right, and that's what piqued my interest. That's when I stopped eating and thinking, well, okay, now they're not holding into anything in particular, and they're preparing grounds for concluding. It probably means that they started listening to military and understood that their political goals cannot really be converted into military achievements, and that means that they need to diminish their political asks. And their remote goals of capturing 2 territories, Donetsk, fully Kherson and Lugansk, to then sit down and negotiate, that becomes a very, like a smoke in a distance goal. Just smoke and mirrors. There is nothing that can support that achievement. All right, we've been live for about 14 minutes. I want to say to our viewers that we have a poor connection today because Kiev, war, things disappear. As for me, stop flooding our chat. I'm not in Georgia. I have meetings on a different continent. Everything is good. So it just reflects on my background and its quality. Almost 200,000 are watching us, 76,000 click the like button. Let's bring the map. Many people, including President Zelensky, are making statements that on the eastern side of the front that is now moving, Russian troops started some motion. They're conducting several offensive maneuvers. Do you think that is the beginning of that big military operation that they were threatening us with? No, these are preparatory actions, in my view. I think the beginning of offensive will need to wait for another month, according to their supplies and logistics motions. But they're still doing undertaking some actions to keep our forces engaged. The fact is that Russian troops occupy a good territory for offensive, but a very poor territory for defensive campaigns. So if you are hitting certain positions from where you need overwhelming force around the current tasks, which are still Bakhmut and some other Krasnogora and the like. Otherwise, you need to be defending your positions, and they have very poor defense options in where they are. And they're barely trying to surround Bakhmut. They're trying to move towards Liman. This is not 330,000 troops. This is a sad story for them, because when you can conduct intensive military warfare out of 1,300 kilometers on barely a portion of 80 kilometers long, that's a sad story for the offensive party. They do have some motion near Ugledar. There is definitely somewhat heavy fighting there. There is some heavy fighting to the north of Avdiivka, and their attempt to encircle that. Still very hard fighting near Bakhmut and to the north of it. And their attempts to push towards Liman. But their forums are still talking that our troops are getting much closer to Kremenная now. And in Zaporozhye, there is some actions near Orekhova, but in general, all of them do not even have enough weight for a serious preamble to the offensive. It's more of a probing right now. Big offensive is when there are masses of troops engaged. So, for example, Ugledar, when they're saying brigade of number 40 and 145 of a Pacific region, one needs to understand it's 2 companies each, it's not even a full battalion. So it's not a big offensive. It's some offensive activities and maneuvers, tactical offensive maneuvers, but definitely not a big offensive. We understand that the soldier in a trench, when he sees a company of them attacking, it doesn't really matter if it's a big offensive or a small tactical maneuver. He's still in line of danger, and he's a hero holding his position, fighting back, but it's not a big offensive. So in your opinion, it's not even a preparation for the big one? No, it's not yet. This is just a local regrouping and attacking some tactical goals, including attempt to encircle Bakhmut, encircle Avdiivka, to engage our troops so they do not have enough resources to attack them, and they are regrouping motions behind the front line. But yeah, this is not an offensive. And these victorious relations that they're posting in their forums, that they're in Solidar and on the outskirts of Bakhmut. Okay, let's take a look deeper into that, Mark. Imagine they said truth. So they did what? Went 2 kilometers forward? Yeah, that's a tactical depth. They walked 2 kilometers forward, they'll be kicked back out tomorrow, the same 2 kilometers. This is not serious if you compare that with announcements of a big offensive campaign. On the tactical level, yeah, poor Ukrainian soldier who was in the middle of that, he is definitely not enjoying that situation, and he has to fight for his life, and he's defending his land with his life. This is heroism, and pure and simple. Just being there is heroism. If he is fighting back actively, this is double that. And that's a different story. That's a story on the trench level, on the tactical level. But from the higher up level, it is not about the big offensive. All right. Thank you. We've been live for about 20 minutes, and we have 310,000 watching us. 87,000 click the like button. Look here, I think this one deserves attention, Olexiy. There was a new set of sanctions announced today by the United States, targeting private mercenary corps Wagner, and they announced it to be international criminal organization. Many things can be concluded from it, and of course they're blocking some of the assets of this company, whatever is reachable, that are connected with Wagner, with Prigozhin himself, and companies, proxy companies belonging to Russian special services that work with them, the logistics, transport, some in Arab Emirates, others in Russia, operating abroad. So there's definitely some motion there. And also Tatarstan President Minikhanov got in the list, Manturov, and let's still concentrate on Prigozhin though, and I'll explain why it's interesting. In United States, they started fighting with Wagner, added them to the list. Also, Charter Greenlight Moscow company providing transportation services for the mercenaries. Africa Politology, another company by Prigozhin in Africa, who is trying to diminish Western influence in Africa. Also another company that is specializing on gold mining and precious minerals mining in Africa is under sanctions. So company that is providing jets and spare parts, several aviation companies that conduct transport for Wagner troops in Mali and Central African republics. So remember, many people were expecting them to be announced as a terrorist organization. That would have been a much stronger statement. And here they just acknowledged Wagner to become a transnational criminal organization. I don't know, like some Cosa Nostra, a mafia, maybe like Mexican cartels, drug cartels. So that is a somewhat lower level of heat under Wagner. It's not a terrorist organization, right? It doesn't mean that the measures they're going to use against them will be more humane, but still they did not decide to call them terrorists. What's the meaning of that, do you think? Well, first of all, Mark, there are no guarantees that this status will not be strengthened to a terrorist. Secondary, I don't know the legal implications or legal demands of acknowledging that status. But even being a criminal org, it does mean that they will not be attacked once, they'll be prosecuted systemically. So every transaction, every attempt to make a motion, if it can be monitored and traced from the United States, that will be followed through by the prosecutors, especially if you are not in Russia. That may pose a threat in Africa and Europe, anywhere, because America does control a lot of financial routes, financial flows, and that likely will convert into big issues for Wagner in their traditional operational areas in Africa and their noose around Wagner's neck will tie a little tighter. It will not put an end to their activity, but there'll be a lot more questions, a lot more scrutiny to what they do. Even if they ask a transport company to transport 4 cases of stuff and 9 people in civilian clothes, company will still be traced to and will face sanctions. Governments that work with them, Central Africa, Mali, this is a different story. They're not a small private company. They have export accounts, they have assets, and there would be questions why you're dealing with that international criminal group. And then this government will have to make a choice if between Wagner or between source funds from America. And that is a different story. So Wagner is being limited in their capabilities for outreach and actions abroad. It means everything will become more expensive. They'll need to switch into the gray area. There'll be more questions about the diamonds that they're trying to mine. But in general, we can conclude that it'll be much more difficult for Wagner to conclude their operations and conduct their operations. And it's a good trend. We like it. And also imagine there'll be personal consequences. You try to go to vacation somewhere, come here. Try to take your wife and go to some place on the ocean outside of Russia. Come here. And then decided to strike a deal. You and those who did sign the contract with you, come here and let's have a talk. So that is a serious thing for them. All right. Thank you, Olexiy. Prigozhin seems like he's under fire on all the fronts, external, internal. He is now in the word fight with Girkin. Who are you? What are you doing? Why not you're not in the front? And Prigozhin told Girkin, stop using your tongue, go and fight. And Girkin answered that if I'll go and fight to that war, I don't care about your opinion. I don't ask for your permission. And I've already tried that. But, Girkin, Rogozin, and Prigozhin, they all start to kind of a trifecta quarrel campaign between each other. And Prigozhin is now kind of dropping down in his attacks. That phrase by Peskov, that Kiev is preparing elimination of Prigozhin, many people treat it as an announcement of things to come. Like in a theater, if death is announced, everybody prepares for that to happen. So he's still alive, but people are seriously considering that eventuality. And everything falls into one line that guides him, as Ranevskaya said, from a certain part of female anatomy into the grave. It's just an extended jump. Well, what do you say about that? There's not many options for him. He's a non grata person in Europe, anywhere else. In Russia, he lost the fight to Gerasimov on the front appointments, and his only way out now is to continue escalating, because stepping down would mean his death. And upping the ante is all right as long as you can support that. But when you're out of resources, you cannot do that anymore. There were times when he could, where he thought he could crush the general command or Kadyrov or Zolotov, or perhaps get in fight with FSB. Now this is beyond his reach. So what can he do now? He needs to attack the ones whom he can reach. So Girkin is the next one that he can comfortably attack now, and that's what he is taking as a route. I traced this quarrel for a little bit. It's an interesting conversation when one guy who is trying to talk the prison slang with the guy who tries to talk back at him in Tsarist Russia officer terms. kind of. It's sort of a surreal conversation. It reminds me of some theater comedy, I guess. Yeah, it's vaudeville or something like that. Exactly. It doesn't have a serious influence on the strategic situation on the front, and it can be discussed in terms of the general position of the head of Wagner. But in general, I think he'll be rising ante to the level where he would have to fold because he will have nothing to support that with. But if he stops and folds, that is equal to his death. Because his whole trajectory is basically this. He was rising to power, and people were seeing his rise, and they were jumping on his ship trying to say, hey, well, maybe I can become lucky and successful with him. Now that his rise had turned into a fall, people are jumping off the ship. And in order for him to legalize now and stabilize his position, he needs to either become part of a system and get his allies, get his enemies who will support or who will fight him, but he will be part of systemic management in Russia. This doesn't seem to be an option for him. So right now he is trying to continue fighting. And in any case, if you're stopping your rise to power and you're expanding, you basically, when you stop, you have to draw the borders. The moment you draw the borders is when your foes start to attack you. That's when the dynamics changes, and you're standing and others are trying to bite you pieces of your influence off. And that's a challenge of a different kind. Here you need to have a serious political weight, serious bureaucratic reserves, power reserves in order to answer properly. What if FSB will start biting off his influence? We understand who will win, right? So now all he can is really stir the stuff with Stelkov or Rogozin and just attack each other about different things. What is it about? Hey, blogger, come here, tell me how you fight. Yeah, that's not about much. It's, solid, serious leaders in Russia do not go down to that level. It's like Patrushev who would go down into the public space and would tell Stelkov to go on the front. And Stelkov would counter that saying, you're talking to me in the wrong manner. You have to address me in a different way. And let's go duke it out, and I'll challenge you to a duel. So, yeah, that would be, for Patrushev, that conversation is non-desirable. It's stepping down. So it's difficult to say how long will Prigozhin live from now on, but one can understand he went down from fighting for the head of the command to bickering with Girkin. That means that basically he was kicked out of certain area. He was looking around whom to attack because most of his previous targets are out of reach. He found Stelkov and he focused his attention on that person. And they're both, Girkin and Prigozhin, they're somewhat from an ultra-nationalist patriot group. There are different flavors to those. One of them is somewhat an officer, an old-school officer style. The other is a criminal style. But in essence, this is a squabble between these two ultra-rights and their small electorate group. And I think after that infighting, most people discounted Prigozhin's position significantly. Because his statements of several months ago, what you were saying, you're saying that the children of oligarchs need to serve, need to be on the front. He was praising Zelensky, he was attacking the head of their own general command. And now he's doing what? Arguing with Girkin? And that's not a rise to power, that's a decline. Seems like the bubble that burst. There is a rule of PR and media campaigns. You only have to respond to equals or equal attacks. Sorry, guys, we just had a technical difficulty here, and Alexei's Wi-Fi comes and goes. Mine seems to be working all right. We're waiting for him. Maybe he can come back and continue our discussion. If we have enough time, we'll try to reach him. In the meantime, in the background, while we're doing that, I'll remind you that it would be nice to subscribe if you have not done that yet, using this pause to Feygin Live, to Arestovich, and to the privateer station. Okay, I'm getting notes that Olexiy is unavailable. We are at 2,057,000 viewers, subscribers. Just missing another 3,000 to reach 60. It's up to you to help us get there. Please continue sharing links. 329 almost thousand people are with us tonight, and almost 109,000 click the like button. Thank you, friends. Unfortunately, I'm getting confirmations that we cannot reach Olexiy. Now, as for me, I indeed am traveling with different people. Today I'm in one place, tomorrow I'll be in the other. But this is a political situation that I need to do, and I need to conduct these negotiations, and now I'm on a different continent. So please do not bug me in the chat that my picture is subpar, not as usual. Okay, so we can't reach him by any means. Seems like we're done for today. Tomorrow we'll be discussing Wagner with another guest, Sergei Zhirnov. He visited our stream several times before, and now it seems to be a good topic related to adding Wagner to an international criminal roster. That was a decision made by American legal system, and this is a good cause to discuss what Wagner is doing in Africa through the prism of traditional post-colonial countries who had a different presence in Africa up to 2014, when Wagner tried to step on their interests. In Mali and other places where Wagner is trying to set shop. So who will win in a fight between new Russian criminality in the shape of military organization and inheritance of so-called Bob Dinar from French Foreign Legion to other organizations of similar type that had a much heavier presence in those regions who are working on the African continent, including private military companies as well. So it is a very sharp moment. Will there be an infight? Will there be a war between these private mercenary companies that are backed by countries, and who of them will win, if they will? This is in the context of general superposition of Moscow to the west. Anyway, we've been live for almost 37 minutes. Alexei did not come back. We could not bring him back. Could have happened anything in Kiev. Their connection is pretty poor. And we'll move our stream to Saturday. This one was recorded on Thursday, and we'll discuss it tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow. I'm sorry. Do not worry. We'll be back. Thank you once again, dear friends, and we're glad to see you in today's.